Welcome back. My name's Connor,
I'm Clay.
And I'm Sebastian.
and this is the PatsCast, your podcast for everything New England Patriots. So, last episode we covered other positional needs in the Patriots, including the wide receivers and tight ends, um, and we also looked at free agent possibilities and draft possibilities for those positions as well. We did a stat breakdown of the wide receiver core and the tight end core, a little bit of the New England Patriots. But today, our topic is going to be focused on impending Patriots free agents and our thoughts on who they should resign. So, to begin, we'll start off with the big name, cornerback for the New England Patriots, J.C. Jackson. Had a breakout year this season with 10 interceptions. He was second in the league. Clay, I want to hear your thoughts about J.C. Jackson.
I think J.C. Jackson is 100% a Patriots guy. He's the kind of guy who, underrated, overlooked by most other teams in the NFL. That Belichick method where he's able to find and scope out players on defense, sign them after they were completely undrafted, missed by most people, and then absolutely hit and make that splash in the NFL under the Patriots defense. I think J.C. Jackson is exemplary of the Patriots way. I think that he fits the mold of the team, and I think he's somebody who could take over as a really strong cornerback for the next couple seasons. He's relatively young. He, as I said earlier, fits the mold. I think that he's somebody who definitely should stick around. I mean, he is one of those invaluable players on the team who has solid trade capital if we're looking at trading for a QB or trading for a wide receiver. Um, but he's one of those star players that definitely is a fresh player, a new player, and someone who fits our mold that I think he's super invaluable to have, and we should absolutely try to make him do whatever it takes to have him stick around next season.
Mm-hmm. And Seb, I'll ask you the same question. What are your thoughts on J.C. Jackson?
So looking ahead beyond just JC Jackson, I think I'm looking at everybody with the same ideas in mind, and that's age, that's performance, and as to put it bluntly, what have they done for me recently? Okay, JC Jackson, great example of all three. Okay, right off the bat, he's a young guy, which I love in the sense of cornerback, because the rest of our defense is a little bit on the older side right now. What has he done recently? Going to jump down to that one? Well, I mean, look at his performance like this year alone. I mean, come on. The dude nearly led the league in interceptions. Of course, you got to look at the Dolphins and that one and be angry a little bit about that, but we get what we get. I think he's a huge playmaker. I think the big issue we're going to have is, does he want to sign here? Is he really that interested now? I mean, he sat on the team just now that didn't even make it to 8-8. So it's up to him. Does he want to stay on a losing record team, or does he want to try and go somewhere where he's going to get paid and he's going to win? So I think it's really going to come down to him more than it comes down to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, J.C. Jackson and Xavier Howard, the cornerback from Miami, kind of fought at each other at a stalemate the entire season, getting interception after interception, and unfortunately J.C. Jackson lost that battle. But yeah, no, me personally, I expect J.C. Jackson to get a huge payday in New England. I think he's the type of player to play, anywhere that will pay him. I don't think it matters to him, which team that is. He's a player that's ferocious, aggressive. He specializes in man coverage, and he's very, yeah, like I said, he's very aggressive at the cornerback position. But yeah, we'll talk more about J.C. Jackson later this episode. And we'll mention, the other star cornerback in New England, Stephon Gilmore. But yeah, so for now, we're going to cover the about 20 guys that are about to be impending Patriots free agents, and our thoughts on who they should resign. So starting off, we have safety Cody Davis. He is an eighth season player. He's in his eighth season from Texas Tech, and in 2020 he had 9 total tackles for the Patriots, and he was specializing in special teams. I also believe he had a blocked field goal this season, so that's something to look at. But looking long term, he's 31, I believe. I I wouldn't mind re-signing him to a 1 or 2 year deal, but at the end of the day, he's a special teams player, and those guys are quite replaceable. So you know, I wouldn't mind letting him go, and I wouldn't mind re-signing him. So that's Cody Davis, safety, eighth year player. That's that. So Seb, I'll hand it off to you.
Sure, I'll talk about David Andrews then, who I love as a player. I think no question he's been there with us for a while. My first question, like I said, age. I think he's a little old, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing with O-line. They do tend to have shorter careers as they're getting to hit a lot, one of the most demanding tasks on the field. But I think he's kind of one of those guys who's been able to show they're able to keep it up with age. Additionally, the whole do they want to stay here factor. I mean, he even recently, I think it was his girlfriend, posted that they want to stay in New England. Like he said it himself. So I think that it's a match made in heaven. The guy plays great, no question. One of the best centers in the league right now. And he wants to stay in New England. I just think it's a done deal. I don't think there's any chance he's leaving. I think he'll be here next year and probably for the next 2 maybe before I think he eventually retires as a Patriot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, David Andrews is a lovable guy. He's been the front and center of that offensive line for so many years now. So, Clay.
So, yeah, no, I'm rushing right into it to talk about Rex Burkhead here. So Rex Burkhead had a pretty darn good season for what was described as a change of pace back. He's been in the league for a couple years, I think, since 2013. We acquired him a while ago, I think 2017 around, and he's been moderately good as a backup running back. I think everybody is right to point to the 3 touchdown game as sort of a point to say that this guy is, still a solid running back in the league. But I think at the end of the day, he's 30 years old. He's not ridiculously fantastic. He's not that star talent. He has the athleticism and he has the ability, but I think that he's definitely someone that I personally think we could let go for next season in terms of the running back position. There's some good options in the draft. There's some good free agents that we discussed previously. I think Burkhead, as much as he was a pretty solid part of our offense this season, can go. I think that Burkhead is someone who I wouldn't be drastically upset if we didn't re-sign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Rex Burkhead. For the time that he was healthy this season, he was, very, very beneficial to that New England offense, nicknamed Sexy Rexy. But we'll move on from that. Clay, not Clay, Seb. I want to hand you off to. Want to hand this off? Yeah. Lawrence Guy.
Lawrence Guy. So I'm going to keep at it. Age, right off the bat. That's immediately what I'm looking at. He's going to be 31 next year. That is old. Now, I think the whole, what has he done recently? He's had an okay 2020 season, kind of a quieter season. Not necessarily for him, because he's been kind of a, fit to play kind of player. For example, he's played edge rusher a lot for us, but this year he almost took more of a defensive tackle role, which is honestly something that we're really missing right now. We do not have an edge rush. We do not have any good tackles. I think Chase Winovich is the best we have right now, and even he is not necessarily that big playmaker we need. So that definitely goes to go into Lawrence Guy's favor. I do looking at the stats now. He had 2 sacks this year and a fumble recovery, which, it's not bad. Or for 14 games, I kind of want to see a little more for someone who's going to probably be asking for a little bit more money than they usually do. He's going to retire in the next 4 years. It's a mixed opinion just because we need the position so much, but I'm a little bit over Lawrence Guy at this point, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. He did pick off Baker Mayfield last season, though. Or not last season, but the season before.
Yeah, he's got 1 interception on his career. That's that one. But yeah. I'll give him that.
Hey, he had more interceptions that year than Jamal Adams did this year, so.
Oh, God. We're not comparing anybody. We're just being purely analytical.
All right. The next guy on this list is Demir Bird, and I'll hand it back to you, Seb.
Oh, okay. That's one of my. I normally get a little bit of heat for this, but I actually loved Demir Bird, even though he wasn't necessarily that huge playmaker. We know wide receiver problem has been huge this year. I thought he was very reliable when he was targeted. He was not, he's not going to be your first guy you throw into. He's definitely your third option. But I'll be honest, I kind of want to see him back. I think that for one, our wide receiver core is so bad it couldn't hurt us anyways to take him, especially if we don't take anyone in free agency like a big name. You got to have a guy like that around. You got to have someone who can get that short down yardage. I think Demir Bird was a big third down guy for Cam Newton. He'd always target him there, and almost every time he'd be able to get that third down, which was kind of a big deal. I mean, a catch percentage of 61%, which is pretty good, especially for him. He had a better year last year, but I mean, it's one of his better statistic years in general, so I'll give him that. With the yards per gain of 37 yards, I'm looking at that right now. I mean, he was definitely one of the more productive members of New England's offense. I think you got to resign him just to be safe. I mean, even if he's not here for the long run, if he's not going to be one of those actual starting wide receivers, I think with how little depth we have at that position, it cannot hurt to take him.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think Demir Bird should be a guy that the Patriots re-sign because, this season he was that reliable third and long conversion guy that, the Patriots haven't had in a while. Like, I'd say, 2 or 3 years, ever since Dorsett left. Demir Bird kind of reminds me a lot of Dorsett in a way. But, he had a couple key third down conversions this year, and I really like to see someone like that return. So, yeah. The next guy on this list is outside linebacker Shalik Calhoun, and I'll pass it off to you, Clay.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Shirley Calhoun, to be honest. He had two forced fumbles last season. He had two sacks. He does a darn good job. As someone we're going to talk about later, Dietrich Wise said he compared him to half human, half mystery, and that's how I know that the linebacker room, Patriots linebacker room, is one of camaraderie because he in turn called him, I think, an extraterrestrial. Called Dietrich Wise an extraterrestrial. Um, he just does a solid job. He's a good, not necessarily a staple for the defense, but he's someone who has performed the last two seasons relatively well, and I think he's going to continue to perform. He's not, super young, 28 years old, but he has been a solid mainstay, and I think someone to keep up in that position. Obviously, it can be upgraded, but if he's what we're dealing with in terms of, not our number one linebacker, but someone who gets the job done, I think he can continue and will continue to get the job done.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In a very depleted linebacker core this season, Shalik Calhoun was kind of a shining star. But yes, I agree. Nick Folk is the next guy on this list. And we all had our thoughts after that infamous 2017 season where the Bucks actually played the Patriots, and Nick Folk missed 3 field goals that game, and the Buccaneers released him after the season ended, and for a long time no teams were interested in him. So he actually ended up playing with the AAF, and with the Arizona Hotshots. And fun fact, Nick Folk holds the record for the longest field goal made in the AAF for the few weeks that it lasted. So, but yeah, the Patriots decided to pick him up after the kickers didn't work out. The Patriots drafted that Justin guy, and a lot of missed field goals and extra points there. But Nick Folk, a 13-year player, I'd argue had the best year statistically in his career. He made 26 out of 28 field goals with almost a 93% field goal made, and made 30 out of the 33 extra points with a 90.9% success rate. So I wouldn't mind the Patriots offering Folk a 2-year deal or something like that, just to have him be that bridge kicker before or until the Patriots maybe draft someone in the draft a rookie. Um, you know, I want this future rookie to be better than that Justin guy, but Patriots, other than that Justin guy, have been pretty good with drafting punters and kickers and special teams players in the draft. We've seen the success story with Jake Bailey recently, so hopefully Nick Folk can be that bridge guy, or maybe we can even have him longer than 2 years. I'm not sure. But yeah, no, Nick Folk had a really good season this year, and I'd like to see him back. The next guy on this list is tackle Jermaine Eluemunor. I apologize if I mispronounced that. But the Patriots actually acquired him from a trade in 2019 with the Baltimore Ravens. Patriots gave away a 4th-round pick. He is currently 26 years old. He played college at Texas A&M, and this season he had 8 starts, and he had no penalties or sacks this season. So that's a good thing to see. Yeah, I like the idea of the Patriots bringing him back for like 3 or 4 years, especially if some other guys end up leaving or the Patriots make some, decisions or don't make decisions when re-signing some people. We'll continue on later, but yeah, I like Jermaine Eluemunor to help out that Patriots offensive line, especially with Marcus Cannon coming back. Good news there. An opt-out from last season has decided to come back to the Patriots in 2021, so that's that. Also, I want to mention that Patrick Chung and Dante Hightower are making their return to the Patriots next season, so that's great to hear that. But yeah, that's Jermaine, and I'll pass it back to you, Seb, with Dietrich Wise.
Okay. So as Clay said earlier, they call him the extraterrestrial. You want to know why that is? It's because he's a size 18 shoe. Interesting fact right there. I remember hearing that during a game and be like, you got to be kidding me. And apparently there was some story about how everybody in the locker room works together to find him actual shoes that'll fit him, because size 18 is insane. Especially because he's not incredibly tall. He's a good size for a football player, but size 18. I'm expecting you to be 8'10" if you're wearing a shoe that big. But I regress from that. I think he's a definite yes to bring back for the Patriots, and I think here's a couple reasons why. One, age. He's not too old, but he also has that experience. He's one of those, mid-range players. What he's done recently, had a pretty good year. He had a 1 fumble recovery and a touchdown, 2.5 sacks. I say pretty good year because that's a really good year for what we've had with our edge rushers. It's just been so non-existent in the position. So I think someone like that does not hurt to keep around as we try and flex out the position. So I think it'll be another definite yes for the Patriots to take him back.
Yeah, I agree. We've seen a couple big plays from him this season and seasons past. So Dietrich Wise is a very a player that I'm looking to see in a Patriots uniform next season. So yeah, I kind of want to give everyone's take for this next player, but I'll let Seb start. Running back James White.
Oh, yeah, this is a hard one. I saw this name, and it's instantly what do I want to do versus what do I think the Patriots are going to do? Because, right off the bat, the guy's a hero in Super Bowl 51. We don't win that game without him. That productivity in that game, it's one of the best running back performances in the Super Bowl to begin with. Now, I think also, he was dealing with a lot this year with the loss of his dad and that tragic accident. So that's going to affect you no matter what. But you got to look at the facts. He's getting up there in age, and I think the running back room on the Patriots is really solid right now. When you've got Damian Harris as well as I just blanked on Sony Michel for a second. I can't even believe that Sony Michel. I think when you have two people like that who really showing that they can perform this year, is there a position to have that third running back on the committee? I think you got to look at a couple of things. One, he is a really good receiving back down the line, and I don't think Sonny Michel or Damian Harris have shown that as much. So there is that. So I just think it's going to come down to how much money is he asking for, and is he willing to settle? Because I don't think the Patriots are going to be willing to spend a lot of money on him.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's gonna be tough seeing a guy like James White go. After all that he's done for the Patriots with his time here. But yeah, you mentioned that Super Bowl run and overtime to win the game, and Tom Brady won his. Oh God, was that his fifth then? Yeah, it
Well,
was
that'd
his
be the
fifth.
fifth.
Yeah. Ugh. But yeah, James White has done so much for the Patriots organization, not only as a player, but as a player off the field, or person off the field, I should say. But yeah, yeah, he's getting up there. It's gonna hurt though, cause I believe that the Patriots' offensive scheme has always been to have that receiving back, just in the flats for those screen passes or short passes down the side. Even before James White, there was Shane Vereen and all that. So if the Patriots do end
Well,
up, I'll let you talk, Clay.
I, as I've stressed a whole lot, our offense is drastically different.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that receiving back, while obviously they still have a place in the scheme under Belichick, um, I think that what we're going to learn from the way that Cam Newton played is yes, receiving back is important, but it's difficult to have really good chemistry with your running back room if you have three different guys or four different guys or five different guys out there all over the place.
Hmm.
Um, I think that as much as White is absolutely someone who's near and dear to the Patriots organization, and they most likely are going to probably sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal, see him out. Uh, I think that right now, I don't want to say that we need to be in rebuild mode, but if we're sticking with Cam Newton, we got to build around Cam Newton, and I'm not sure where James White fits into that scheme.
Yeah. No, it's a new offensive phase in the Patriots, or with the Patriots in general, with the addition of Cam Newton. But yeah, another possibility with James White is if the Patriots don't end up re-signing him to that 1 or 2 year deal that Clay mentioned, I really see him going to a team like the Buccaneers, and it's gonna hurt because you know he's gonna follow the path that Gronk left behind, and just go where Brady goes, and you know I think the Buccaneers are going to be a team that will value James White, because I don't think the Buccaneers have really valued running backs that much. Even Leonard Fournette, who is a big power back player, we saw him do a lot of receiving in the playoffs, and it was kind of surprising to see. But Bucks could use someone like James White, but yeah,
They like Ronald Jones.
they do like Ronald. We all love Ronald Jones. I'd say, but um,
Okay.
yeah, it's gonna be tough seeing a guy like James White go if he does, but I wouldn't mind re-signing him to a 1 or 2 year deal. We'll just have to see how the Patriots use him in a new offensive phase. Um, but
Sure.
yeah, Clay, I'll pass the next guy off to you. Defensive tackle Adam Butler.
So I'm going to be tackling, haha, pun intended, the next three players here. So I'll just go through them a little bit more rapid fire
Hmm.
than before, because I kind of like all of them, with the exception of I'm a little bit shaky on the next guy, Justin Bethel. I think that Adam Butler has done a really solid job at the defensive tackle position last season. If I'm not mistaken, I think there was some injury involved. I could be wrong, but he put up some solid numbers. He was a good part of the defense. Was operational, and I think that it would be wise of the Patriots to bring him back. I believe there was some sort of he deflected two passes. He had 4 sacks. He's putting up good numbers, and that's right now what we need in the defense. We need people who are putting up numbers and not doing nothing. Obviously, he's nothing spectacular in terms of very large numbers, but we like our workhorses. So the next guy, Justin Bethel. Justin Bethel is a little bit older. He's around 30 years old. However, he did put up some okay numbers. He's been kind of batted around. He was with Arizona for a long time. Then I think he went to Atlanta, Baltimore. He was here, and Baltimore back to here. He, I think, is sort of the opposite of what I said previously, which is why I'm a little bit shaky about him, especially as a cornerback. We have some pretty good depth at the cornerback position. I think that he would be an okay veteran quarterback to have just in the locker room. However, I would not be very upset if he didn't make it onto the roster for next season. But he's one of those players that I just personally have no idea. It's not like he's going to break the bank for the Patriots. So he could come back. Maybe he won't come back. But we have solid cornerback play. I think the only reason that he even got the numbers that he did, he got a couple tackles, is because of just the weirdness with the Gilmore injury and the shakiness in the cornerback position, aside from J.C. Jackson. And then the last guy in my defensive trio here is defensive end John Simon. John Simon, he's a versatile player. He's been around a little longer. He's 30 years old, but I think he's still got heck of a lot of football left in him. He had some sacks, 2 sacks. He had a really solid number of tackles. I think he had around 53 tackles. And he's a versatile guy. I like versatile guys. The Patriots like versatile guys. I really think that he's worth signing again, maybe do another 1-year deal, see how he plays next season, because even though he is 30, defensive ends are players that can play a little bit deeper into the age range than a lot of other players, as we've seen with people like J.J. Watt. I think we can keep him around. I think John Simon is worth having around. So that's the trio. Like all of them, Justin Bethel. Meh.
Yeah. No, I agree with all your takes there. But someone that we haven't heard takes from was Seb. But the next guy on this list is Cam Newton. Like I said, we haven't heard Seb's takes on him yet. But I'm giving Cam to Seb.
Give me the floor. Give me the floor. Here we go. All right, here's the stats. Now, rather than just give them out of context, I'd rather compare Cam Newton to other quarterbacks in the league. Mm-hmm. Okay, QBR. Who ranks above him? 2 names I looked at. Andy Dalton, Nick Mullins. Bad. Okay, let's look at touchdowns. Who had more touchdowns than him? Dak Prescott had more touchdowns than him. I think we all know what happened to Dak after Game 5. Bad. What was Cam Newton's sack percentage? 7.8%. When you have one of the best O-lines in the league, that is very bad. Now, I thought, there's no stat that could be worse than any of those. I decided to look at longest pass. None other than XFL prodigy P.J. Walker had a longer pass than Cam Newton did. He played 1 game. I like Cam as a person. I think he's a great leader. He's been great in the locker room. I think he's really given a lot of guys there a lot of motivation. I think he was great with N'Keal Harry. I just don't think, looking at this season alone, he is capable of being a starter in the NFL anymore. It's hard to say because, like I said, I genuinely like the guy, but I'm looking at the numbers here. If Nick Mullins, if P.J. Walker are doing better than you in different categories, you shouldn't be starting. And I got to give him a huge break in the sense that he did not have an off season. He had no time to adjust. Halfway through the season, he got COVID. Nothing was working his way. So I would love to see Cam Newton get a second shot, really go out there, have a great year on a different team. I think we shot our shot, and we need to try something else before we ruin another chance to rebuild. Because if we sign Cam Newton back, I think it's going to be another year where I just don't think we're going to amount to very much. And that's just my take on it, I'll be honest.
Hmm. Yeah. In the first episode, we mentioned that a potential landing spot for Cam Newton, if not New England, could be Washington to pair back with Ron Rivera, to an already, I'd say, I'd say pretty talented wide receiver core. We'll see this off season if Washington can make it even more talented, but you know, Cam to a team like Washington makes sense. Um, but yeah, um, we already talked about Cam Newton, plenty already, so we'll just move on from him. Like Clay, I'm gonna take three guys on the list right here. The first is Jason McCourty. Jason McCourty is a 12-year player. He's played with teams like the Titans and the Browns. Um, this season, he had 42 total tackles and 3 passes defended. What I was surprised about was the amount of money that the Patriots have been paying him. He's being paid about $5 million per year, and yeah, that's in the grand scheme of things, I think that's a lot of money for a guy like Jason McCourty, who only had 3 passes defended this season. It's going to be heartbreaking to break him up from his twin brother Devin, but simply put, Devin is just a better player. And Clay, no, not Clay. Seb mentioned before that. I mean, I'm guessing you guys both did. You guys touched upon the fact that the Patriots, their secondary is pretty loaded, and you know, it's not going to hurt them that much if they, take out one or two of those guys and just work with what they have, because the Patriots are very good with finding hidden gems in the draft, or even UDFA's following the draft that can play that number 2 or number 3 position. We've seen it with J.C. Jackson. He was an undrafted free agent, and he was second in the league when it came to interceptions. So I wouldn't mind Jason McCourty leaving. Like I said, it's going to be heartbreaking to separate him from his brother Devin, but um, yeah, um, that's that. Terrence Brooks, 7-year player out of Florida State, 28 years old. This season he recorded 23 total tackles. I with a guy like him, I think he's more of just a depth guy. I wouldn't mind signing him to a 1 or 2 year deal, paying him like I don't know, like $2.5, $3 million a year. Just a guy to put in there every once in a while, maybe to specialize on special teams. But Terrence Brooks, that's that. The next guy, this might be a lot, but Joe Thuney, guard. He's been a guard for the Patriots for the past 5 years. Last year, he signed the franchise tag for just over $14 million, and everyone's expecting for him to leave, especially after that photo that he posted of him sitting in the middle of Gillette Stadium, just getting a last gaze at everything. And it's gonna be sad seeing him go, because this season he allowed nothing, basically. He allowed no pressures. Well, maybe that's a stretch, but he allowed no sacks, and he allowed he's just a very solid guy at the guard position, and it's gonna be sad seeing a guy like him go. But the good thing is he's gonna get paid somewhere, whether that's New England or not. But a lot of people are predicting that he'll go to a place like Cincinnati, because not only does Cincinnati have the cap space, but they need an O-line, and Joe Thuney can be that guard that they haven't had in a while. So you know, that's Joe Thuney. Another thing I want to mention: if the Patriots do end up using the tag on him again this year, it's going to be just about $17.7 million for another 1-year contract. That's about, that's about a quarter of the Patriots cap space this off season with about 65 million in total. But I want to hear your guys' takes on Joe Thuney or Joe Tooney, however you pronounce it.
Now that you mentioned Cincinnati, it makes me feel a little bit better about us losing Joe Thuney possibly, because I know that they definitely need that more than we do, because we're probably not going to be starting a fragile rookie generational talent like Cincinnati is. I've always, especially in mock drafts and the way that I know this is a Patriots show, but I'm very much so concerned about football and the health and safety and well-being of the players, especially the ones that I think are really doing good things for their team and their community, like Joe Burrow is. And it's kind of heartbreaking to see someone go through an injury like that early in their career. Joe Thuney has been a mainstay of the New England Patriots for a very long time. And as much as it would be very, very nice to see him continue to do so, I think that I have full faith in the team to find a way to replace him with what we have now, go find someone in the draft. Not so sure about free agency, but I think I really think that he's someone that we could see go and spread that money to get talent elsewhere. I think that Connor was talking about that post. I think it's a change that he's ready and willing to make. So as much as I say this with a heavy heart, and I've been making this call a lot this segment, but I think that we could be alive and not be a terrible team without Joe Thuney.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's unfortunate to see him go. I'll leave it at that. But I just don't think he's going to re-sign with us. I think he wants to win. I mean, he understands that he wants to get paid. So he's not getting any younger. I mean, it'll be a loss, but I think our O-line is in a position where we can handle it with people like Michael Owenu, as well as Connor said earlier, Marcus Cannon does come back. So not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Patriots have been preparing for this for a little bit now, so but at the end of the day it's going to be heartbreaking for all Patriots fans. But
something that isn't going to be heartbreaking, to switch the mood a little bit with our last player here. Connor, who am I talking about here?
you are talking about quarterback for the New England Patriots, Brian Hoyer.
Yes.
That just sounds wrong even.
Hold on. Brian Hoyer, 11-year veteran. He was drafted by the New England Patriots in 2009. Quarterback from Michigan State, a long, long time ago. Doesn't make a lot of sense considering how Tom Brady is from his rival school. But that's besides the point. We don't care about that. And apparently, in terms of drafting quarterbacks, we don't care about talent either. Because Brian Hoyer, time and time again, has underperformed. And this year especially, that one infamous game where we started him over Jared Stidham, proved not only to be a mistake, but a drastic one at that. Although the stats shown aren't drastically bad, he threw one interception and had a fumble. It felt like he threw 10 interceptions. He should not be the starting or backup or, dare I say, third-string quarterback for any team. I really hope we don't re-sign him. We just signed a quarterback off of, I think it was the Bengals practice squad, and I really hope that he's the guy who is our third string instead of Brian Hoyer. He's a veteran venture guy, but time and time again he's proven, whether it's Arizona, Cleveland, Houston, Chicago, San Francisco, or Indianapolis, he's not the guy. He shouldn't be near the guy. You shouldn't be near the guy who's near the guy. I don't think that this is a stunning or radical decision whatsoever to end off our talk about free agents in the upcoming season. Brian Hoyer is not going to be a New England quarterback. I'm not sure he's going to be a quarterback for really any team next season. And if he is, he's not going to see time on the field.
Hmm.
Uh, that's enough about Brian Hoyer. I'm sure he's a nice guy.
Oh, I actually, believe it or not, I actually have some surprising news on Brian Hoyer. I've heard reports that Miami might be paying Brian Hoyer a short-term deal. So that just tells you what they think about Ryan Fitzpatrick and his free agency future. So yeah,
I don't know. I think if the Dolphins were to sign him, I think the only reason they would be signing him is just because he knows the Patriots system better than anybody. Maybe
yeah,
the Dolphins understand that, and they got a guy like that. Ooh, who knows? Maybe he's like a double agent of sorts.
yeah. Who knows? The Patriots might do the same with Fitzmagic, and Ryan will complete the AFC East tour. So
Well, yeah.
I said maybe. I said maybe. But yeah, uh, yeah. Brian Hoyer, exciting player to talk about. What is going to be exciting though is this next segment we have here. Um, is we like to call it "Who should they tag?" Um, but yeah, the Patriots franchise tag hasn't been called on anybody yet, and the deadline is March 9th. And by the time this episode is released, I believe this episode will be released on March 8th. So, maybe by the time this episode is out, the franchise tag has already been used. But if not, we'll be giving our opinions right before the deadline. So, you know, Seb, I'll ask you first. Who do you think the Patriots should use the franchise tag on?
I got two answers I'm thinking about deciding upon one of these guys. I mean, number one, I think you got to consider Brian Hoyer. I mean, come on. He gets somebody to sell hot dogs in the stands, right? Now, reality, who should they franchise tag? I think it's kind of an obvious answer, but I think it's the only answer. And I think you got to go after J.C. Jackson if you can't get him. I think he's definitely worth keeping around at least one more year. It's nothing less than a mentor to other guys. I know the room's pretty good, especially with Jodon Williams as well as we haven't even talked about yet. Freaking, oh my God, I can't, once again, blanking on Jonathan Jones, which had a pretty decent year this year. Nothing crazy compared to Stephon Gilmore's, 2 years ago and now J.C. Jackson's last year, but I think he's still shown himself to be very capable. So I think, the room has some space, but I think still J.C. Jackson's number one, who I would 100% franchise tag out of this list.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. I'll ask you another question, Seb. If the Patriots end up franchise tagging J.C. Jackson, what do you think the Patriots are going to do next season with Stephon Gilmore on his last year on his contract?
Mm, I think it's going to depend on how Stephon Gilmore does next year before I even say anything. I think you got to obviously take that into account. That's huge.
Yeah.
Based off solely the past 2 years, I think you keep him around.
Hmm. Yeah. Sorry, that was kind of a surprise question, but
No, I think it's a good question.
yeah.
I just think that I think it's the right question to ask next year once we're in that situation. Because who knows? Maybe Stephon Gilmore comes out there and he's suddenly the worst cornerback in the league.
Hmm.
I strongly doubt it, but who knows?
Hmm. Yeah. Clay, who do you think the Patriots should tag next season or this season?
So Rex Burkhead looks a lot like Brian Hoyer, so maybe he could play quarterback for us next season. No. I think that looking at the history of the Patriots' use of the franchise tag, it's always been a little weird. And as much as J.C. Jackson makes a lot of sense as a young guy, I think, again, he could be looking for a payday outside of New England. But I think someone like Nick Folk has the practicality to get the franchise tag. He played well enough. He played really well. And as much as he's not that coveted, man, we got to keep that guy around. At the end of the day, the Patriots, hopefully, and historically, are a winning team. this season's weird. It's a fluke. We were playing around with quarterbacks this season. There's a lot of excuses to be made, but I think that J.C. Jackson's probably going to want to stick around. I think at the end of the day, he's probably going to want to stick around. It's pretty clear when a player wants out, and reports start coming out, and people start calling, and people start trying to make a trade and are interested. The Patriots really haven't made any big trades. They haven't talked about their capital. They haven't touted their capital. Everybody was talking about Gilmore being traded, but not J.C. Jackson. I think when it comes to the franchise tag, it's probably going to be Nick Folk, if anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've seen reports on, Patriots might franchise tag a guy like Nick Folk just to see, what goes on next year. Like I said before, he arguably had the best year of his career statistically, making 26 out of 28 field goals. But my guy on who the Patriots should use the tag on is John Simon. I believe that John Simon is a super underrated player, and this list that we have here has him listed as a linebacker, but he also has played on the edge a couple times. And
Right, defensive end.
yeah, and I I I'd say he's kind of that hybrid defensive player, kind of like how Jamie Collins was, but not as effective. But like I said, I believe John Simon is super underrated. He makes a couple key tackles and stuff, so he's getting paid about $2 million this year. So doing some quick math, he might get a franchise tag might be valued around $4 or $5 million. So I wouldn't mind the Patriots tagging a guy like Simon, and stuff like that. So that's that segment. The next segment we have here is I talked about earlier. We're gonna talk about J.C. Jackson and Stephon Gilmore. So we're gonna talk about who's the number one cornerback on the team. Is it Gilmore or Jackson?
I have a hot take on this.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think statistically, obviously, last season, the number one quarterback was J.C. Jackson. No questions. Same way that if you're looking at defensive numbers, players like T.J. Watt and Xavier Howard, they were in heavy contention and, dare I say, should have been the AP Defensive Player of the Year. But the NFL is weird. The NFL likes stars, it likes consistency, it likes repeats. Why in the world was Aaron Donald the Defensive Player in the Year when you had players like, as I said earlier, T.J. Watt, even J.C. Jackson, and Xavier Howard having elite defensive performances? Why? Consistency. Why? Because people know who Aaron Donald is. Maybe they're not so familiar with those other two players because they weren't, highly touted. I know T.J. Watt was a first-round pick. They weren't highly touted, early on first-round picks that people follow and know about. Aaron Donald is that guy. It's his third time winning the award, and I think it's the same thing that goes with the Patriots, where Gilmore's a known name. J.C. Jackson, although he performed, isn't as known of a person and as known of a name. And I think that's why it's kind of flabbergasting when you hear people talking about, oh, the Patriots are going to try to make a huge trade and their big draft capital is not their number one statistical quarterback, who's probably going to continue to be their number one statistical quarterback, but the guy that people know. And as weird as that is, if we're going to be doing a trade, it's probably not going to be J.C. Jackson. It's probably going to be Stephon Gilmore. So I am of the opinion that our number one cornerback is J.C. Jackson. But according to the masses, according to the NFL, our number one cornerback is Stephon Gilmore. If the Patriots organization was smart and is smart, which they are, and especially considering other NFL teams and their management, they are very smart. That is in something that they should probably take advantage of. Gilmore will probably perform next season if he doesn't get injured like he did this season. However, I think that capital in a player is something that should be used to strengthen the things that really need strengthening. And when it comes to cornerbacks for the New England Patriots, we're okay right now. We have a very, dare I say, one of the best quarterback rooms in the league, and losing Gilmore would be a lot. And I think that there's definitely a point of it to keep both of those guys around, and that's probably going to be the case. However, I think if there's a way that the New England Patriots go crazy, make a jump, and try to really compete in terms of riskiness for a season, it's not going to be J.C. Jackson who leaves. It's going to be Gilmore.
Mm-hmm.
So I find your opinion interesting because I actually believe the exact opposite in the sense, in that I believe if you look at the numbers this year, as a lot of people do, everyone was like, "Oh, J.C. Jackson's the way better one." A lot of people, like I love Patriots Twitter because they jump on things so quickly, and one of those things was the narrative that Stephon Gilmore was washed this year, that he wasn't the defensive player of the year like he was last year, and he was just overshadowed with this young new talent. I think it's honestly a disgrace to Gilmore, who I think had a great season. Sure, he didn't lead the league in interceptions, but that's not. I don't really care how many times you intercept the ball if you still lose the game. I think you got to look at it this way. Belichick's favorite thing to do with a defensive weapon is to try and take away what you do best. Okay, got great offense. He's going to get rid of that. Look against the Cardinals. I mean, how many times did DeAndre Hopkins catch that ball? Like it was just a shutdown by Stephon
It
Gilmore.
was twice.
I think he has just done an incredible job this year, especially, of maybe not making a huge splash in the interception margin or in some other major defensive way. But if you look at his passes broken up, if you look at how good he shadows those offensive, those wide receivers, I just think it's immeasurable what he does to the team. And I do agree that he has a name value in the sense if you're going to do a trade, teams are going to want to go after him. But I think it's because they are aware of how valuable he is, how valuable someone with that skill set is. Because I don't care how many times you pick off Sam Darnold or Tua or Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like, great. J.C. Jackson had a ton of interceptions, did a great job this year. But I think in the big games against those top wide receivers, Stephon Gilmore performed better than he did.
Yeah, I honestly like both of your takes. I like Seb's take on, yeah, sure, numbers are flashy, and they give you, you know, they make you nominees for big awards like Defensive Player of the Years. But at the end of the day, when you have a shutdown guy like Gilmore who could take on guys like DeAndre Hopkins and prevent Kyler Murray from targeting him over 3 times and limiting him to less than 30 yards in a game, that's a pretty key part of your defense that instantly makes that guy one of the best at his position in the league. But J.C. Jackson still has a career ahead of him. Yeah, his ten picks this season were incredible. He's an aggressive guy, like I stated before. But he still has a few years ahead of him, and especially if Patriots give him a huge payday, sign him to like a 5-year deal. You still have a guy like J.C. Jackson that could develop into a guy like Stephon Gilmore. Because think about it, the Patriots are known for making nobodies into somebodies. We've seen it with Tom Brady, we've seen it with Wes Welker, we've seen it with Julian Edelman, we've seen it with Rex Burkhead, and we've seen it with Stephon Gilmore. Before coming to New England, Stephon Gilmore was, a guy for the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Bills didn't utilize him correctly, and once he
He was a
became
first round pick.
he was a first round pick, but yeah, he was a great guy in college, but like I said, the Buffalo Bills didn't utilize him correctly, and once the Patriots saw what Gilmore had to offer when he became a free agent, the Patriots paid him big, 6-year contract, a lot of money, and it worked out for them. So yeah, I really don't know. I don't think you can say who's the number one wide receiver. Oh, no, number one wide receiver, number one cornerback. The 10 picks this season for J.C. Jackson was great. It helped us. It helped us defensively a lot. It helped us get our offense back out on the field much more often, even though it didn't really make much of a difference. But you know, yeah, J.C. Jackson only had one great year. Well, yeah, one great year. Stephon Gilmore has had many. That's why he's a defensive player of the year. But I don't think right now you can say one of them is the number one guy. Yeah, Gilmore has the reputation, but Jackson has the ceiling. So, we'll see what happens with those two guys in the future. But like you said, Clay, it's too early to make decisions about next year when it comes to these two guys. But if the Patriots do franchise tag J.C. Jackson like you hope, what do the Patriots do with Gilmore next season?
Probably keep him.
Keep him? Yeah.
Yeah, simple as that.
Yeah. I like you said, Clay, he's a valuable trade piece. He's easily worth at least a first round pick from any team. A lot of people were, um, you know, a lot of people were mentioning, the Texans and making a blockbuster trade for Deshaun Watson that included Gilmore, but even then, that's going to take like two first round picks, Gilmore, and some change. So, we'll see with that. Um, but yeah, no, Gilmore and Jackson, two talented cornerbacks for the New England Patriots. Patriots are known for stacking up their secondaries and making them good. But yeah, I think that's that for this episode. We all gave our picks on or our opinions on the impending free agents who the Patriots should
Get it?
return. Yeah. um, but next week we're gonna talk about actually. What do you guys think of doing a mock draft next week on the draft, and we'll each make our own individual mock drafts and discuss them all together. I think
Oh
that'd be
yeah.
kind of fun.
as long as nobody ends up somehow taking Trevor Lawrence with the 15th pick, then I'm all good with that.
Yeah, but yeah,
Realistic mock drafts.
yeah. So all three of us will organize our mock drafts and we'll compare and contrast. It sounds like school when I say that. I'm sorry, but yeah, no, we'll include trades and stuff. We won't just go by the original draft order issued by the league, but we'll include trades that we believe might happen, trades that will help every team in the first round, um, and then some of our opinions on some sleepers, I guess you could say, and stuff like that. So, like I said before, free agency is upon us. The franchise tag period already started, but the deadline is not until March 9th. And then the last, there's a 2-day period, March 15th through March 17th, where players, impending free agents for those teams can offer you know contract negotiations and stuff like that. So and then starting March 17th is when all the craziness will start, and teams will sign players like J.J. Watt, who's still a big question mark on where he'll land. Maybe we'll see a blockbuster trade for Deshaun Watson, and maybe the Patriots will pick up a top offensive player, a key player at the wide receiver, tight end position. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, that's that, and we'll see you guys next week.